now we probably have the most athletic person in the room introducing an NFL athlete. In fact, when I did the podcast with him, I had to write out on a piece of paper, "Don't say College World Series," because I kept in my mind, he played for the NFL and he was playing for the Colts the year that they won the College World Series. Is what I kept saying. And you have to know me, I don't do sports very well. I'll watch it if it's on, but I don't know who's who. In fact, I kind of know the rules of football, but I certainly don't know the minutia kinds of things. But anyway, what brought him to my attention last year was that we both write for BP Magazine for blogs, and I asked the owner of the magazine if I could get in touch or if she'd get me in touch with him, and because I thought, what better than to bring an athlete, a football player, to Nebraska who is willing and man enough to talk about his mental health issues. Most of us men seldom want to bring it up. Many, many men suffer from depression. Many young men suffer. And so tonight, I'm just really glad to have a former NFL player who was part of the Super Bowl champions of the Colts back in 2006, right? I'm getting it. And a new friend of mine. Would you please welcome with me, Keith O'Neill.
Whoa, thank you. Very thankful to be here tonight. Very fortunate. I'm very blessed because I tried to take my life once. I was 31 years old and recently diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features and in a mixed state when I was diagnosed. I wanted it all to end, my life. I wanted everything to end, the pain, the shame, the secrecy I was living in, the confusion, the anxiety, the depression, the darkness. I wanted it all to be over. It was July 6, 2012, a date my wife, my family, and myself will never forget. It's one of those days that when it comes around on the calendar, you remember. But from an outsider's perspective, I had everything. I had it all. I had a beautiful, caring wife. I had a 10-week-old baby boy, 10 weeks old, when I tried to take my life. I had just recently retired from the NFL with a Super Bowl ring. I was living in my dream home. I had money in the bank. Like I said, from an outsider's perspective, I had it all, but it all came down crashing hard and fast. Earlier, it was said that 1 in 5 people live with a mental health disorder. 1 in 5. Take a look around. Seriously, take a minute. I am not alone in this room. I'm not alone. 43 million Americans live with a mental health disorder. That's the amount of people that live in New York and Florida combined. 6 million people, almost 6 million people live with bipolar disorder, what I have. 1 out of 5 people with bipolar disorder takes their own life. The statistics are staggering, and no one talks about it. So today, I'm going to tell you my story. It's a story about overcoming obstacles. It's about overcoming adversity. It's about triumph. It's about setbacks. It's about redemption. It's about struggle. It's about playing in the NFL with an undiagnosed mental illness, bipolar disorder. It's about giving up. I said it. The story is about giving up. But more importantly, it's about never giving up. My symptoms go back as far as I can remember, from when I was a little kid living in New Jersey. I lived with anxiety, depression, and a wicked case of insomnia. It was terrible. But I didn't know what was going on because I was a little kid. How do you talk about that? How do you express your feelings when you don't know what's going on yourself? I can remember sitting on my mother's lap in the backyard of our house, filled with anxiety about sleep at night. Something as simple as that, something that no child should have to worry about was sleep. And there I was, scared to death because I couldn't sleep. I would toss and I would turn. My mind would race. I couldn't shut my mind off at night. I was confused. I was scared. Stay up till the wee hours of the morning. I'd bug my brother. I'd bug my parents about not being able to sleep. I would turn the clock around on the nightstand because time would frustrate me. My father, I was raised Catholic, Irish Catholic family in Buffalo, New York. Eventually moved to Buffalo. My father saw I was struggling and he offered me a pocket Bible, one of those little pocket Bibles. Y'all remember those? And I would put it in my pillowcase at night to sleep with. As you can see, I struggled as a kid. I would lock my bathroom door and light candles and pray. Pray to a God that I felt like at the time wasn't answering me because I wanted to know why I was the way I was. Why I couldn't. Mostly I just prayed for sleep. But I was also a very normal kid at that age, however you define normal. You know, I played sports, I chased girls around, I played manhunt, got in trouble. I got into a lot of trouble when I was a kid. But around the age of 11 or 12, I started having suicidal thoughts. And I really didn't know what they were. I just know that I wanted to die. Parts of me, sometimes, not all the time. I was undiagnosed bipolar. Very hard to diagnose children from what I've been told with this illness. Times might have changed, I don't know, but back then, it was different. I could vividly remember staring at my parents' medicine cabinet at all the pills and the peroxide and the rubbing alcohol and thinking, maybe if I just took all these pills or drank all this medicine, maybe I could die. And part of me wanted to. Part of me didn't. I was confused, like I said. But these feelings, they didn't come from outside sources. I was never bullied. I came from a supportive Christian family. I had parents with a very tight marriage. My siblings I idolized and adored. I had good grades. I was a good little athlete. I had girlfriends and friends. I was popular. That came from this undiagnosed illness that I had. But by the time my family moved from New Jersey to Buffalo, New York in high school, a lot of these feelings changed for some reason. I don't know why. I have no idea. Maybe it was changing location. But I felt a lot of pressure to play sports, to play football, and I'll tell you why. My father, Ed O'Neill, was a first-round draft pick in the 1974 NFL draft. He was the 8th pick overall. He was an All-American linebacker at Penn State University. He played 8 years in the league. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be just like my dad. When I was little, I wanted to play football. On top of that, my older brother Kevin was a blue-chip All-American wide receiver in the state of New Jersey. Could have went to almost any school. Schools like Clemson and Penn State and Michigan State. Not Nebraska. But he ended up going to Syracuse University when they were good. When they had guys like Donovan McNabb and Dwight Freeney and Marvin Harrison, guys who I wanted to be like. So when I was a little kid, I wanted to be just like my older brother. I wanted to play football. On top of that, my older brother-in-law, who my sister married, Drew Haddad, he played in the NFL for 5 years. He played for the Buffalo Bills, the Indianapolis Colts, and the San Diego Chargers. So you can only imagine having these 3 men above you who you want to be like, who you want to emulate, and having this undiagnosed illness and this stuff going on upstairs. It was very difficult to channel all these feelings. But I had my opportunity coming out of Sweet Home High School in Buffalo, New York, or Amherst, New York, a suburb of Buffalo. I had my opportunity. I got 2 scholarship offers to 2 1AA schools, 2 schools that I never heard of in my life. Yes, I was grateful, but I felt like I wasn't going D1. The University of Maine and Northern Arizona University. I went on my visit to Maine first. Orono, Maine, a suburb of Bangor. It was colder than Buffalo, believe it or not. And I got there, and Stephen King's house was right off campus. I went to Northern Arizona University. I went to NAU, 18 years old, 2,200 miles away from my support system, my family, who I leaned on when I needed them, when I didn't know what was going on. But I get out to Flagstaff, Arizona, and if you've ever been there, you understand. One of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. Thousands of stars at night, millions of stars at night, ponderosa pine trees. It was a mountain town. It wasn't like Buffalo. It wasn't like New Jersey. It was exactly what I needed. It was laid back, even kind of hippie, and Sedona was only a half an hour away, and the Grand Canyon was only an hour away. It was great. But I got there and I struggled a lot. I got there and I struggled with balancing academics with athletics, and obviously having an undiagnosed illness. So I turned, unfortunately, to alcohol and drugs. And I got into a lot of trouble. I almost got kicked out of school. I almost got kicked off the football team. But then my junior year came around, and I met this lovely girl. Her name was Jill Eady. Her family's from Nebraska. They're sitting right here. And I tried my hardest to turn my life around. I quit drinking, and I focused on football and my academics. But then my coaching staff brought in a junior college transfer and put him in front of me, going into my junior year. And right then and there, I thought my dreams of playing in the NFL were over. If I couldn't play at a school that I never heard of in my life, how was I ever going to make the NFL? So they started George in front of me, and it was the first game of the season. And on the third play of the game, what do you think happened? He broke his leg. I was extremely happy. Even though he was my teammate and he was my friend, it was my opportunity. It was my chance to prove to those 130 Division I schools that gave my brothers and my dad full scholarships. It gave me the chance to show them that they messed up, that they should have given me that opportunity. Who said I didn't have a chip on my shoulder? That year, I was a first-team all-conference linebacker. I made sure that my coaches never benched me again. The next year, I was a first-team All-American with hopes of getting drafted into the NFL. But draft day came around. I had my future wife, my best friend, and my family flew out from Buffalo to be with me. 7 rounds went by. 7 rounds. My name didn't go across the ticker. I didn't get a phone call. Again, I thought it was over. Again, my dreams were over. But then about 3 hours later, I got a call from my agent. He said, the Dallas Cowboys want to sign you for a weekend tryout. I thought, the Dallas Cowboys? I hated the Cowboys. Now they're like my favorite team. I mean, who wouldn't want to play for the Dallas Cowboys? It's like the Yankees, You hate them, but... And then I realized who the head coach was. Coach Bill Parcells. And I knew it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be hard to make his team, especially as an undrafted free agent coming out of a small school. But then I realized that Coach Parcells coached my father when my father played for the Patriots. He was my father's linebacker coach. And then I realized he cut my father. But the thing is, he cut my father on August 26th, 1980, the same day I was born. So I knew from day one that I was destined to make it. I knew it was going to be tough. So I go out to Irving and practice. They gave me $5,000. I remember thinking that was so much money, and I learned that it was actually the least amount of money that they could give somebody to come try out. And then I played very well. I surprised everybody. I surprised myself. I surprised the organization, the coaches. So they invited me back to training camp, where all the stars were, where all the big-time guys were. And it was my time. It was my chance to make the Dallas Cowboys. I had one opportunity. And this is when all my symptoms started coming back. The pressure, the anxiety, the racing thoughts. I'm not lying, I went 5 nights in a row without sleeping during training camp. 5 nights. I've had a lot of physical injuries in my life. Nothing is worse than being sleep deprived, I can promise you that. Nothing. I would lay in bed at night, and I would toss, and I would turn, and I would break out in sweats, and my roommate would be sleeping, Eric Bickerstaff from Wisconsin. He'd be sleeping. I didn't understand. I would get down on my hands and my knees, and I would pray to God. Why? Why can't I sleep? Why are you doing this to me? Help me play. Make me the best. I need sleep. Sleep. I'd go into the bathroom, turn the lights on. I'd sit on the closed toilet seat and just pray, like I did when I was a little kid, asking God, why? Why have you made me like this? Why can't I just sleep? But I was playing great. I would sit in the stands in between practices while my teammates slept during two-a-days. And I would cry. Here I am, a 23-year-old butt-kicking linebacker in the NFL, crying to my future wife, to my mother or my sister, the women in my life, because of the sleep deprivation. And I would constantly just pray and pray my way through it. I literally prayed my way through it. 2 days before final cuts, I made it from 90 guys on the team down to 53. 2 days before final cuts, Coach Parcells called my father. And my parents knew something was going on with me, obviously, so they were worried. So my dad picked up the phone, and Coach Parcells said, Ed, you and your wife Nancy have raised one hell of a boy, and he's going to make this football team. And my dad said, so does that mean he's on practice squad? Coach That is funny. My dad would think that. And Parcells said, no, he's playing with the big boys. He's on the varsity. He's playing against the Atlanta Falcons that week. But the thing is, you can't tell him. You can't tell Keith his cuts aren't for 2 more days. Two days later, Coach Parcells approached me and said, Keith, you made the Dallas Cowboys. And I made it. The thing was, I wasn't even happy. I just wanted to sleep. So I was with the Cowboys my first year. I played very well. But there's a story I like to tell. I was sitting in the steam room probably midway through my rookie year by myself, because I kind of kept to myself because I was very focused. And an old scout walked in the steam room. And he was a very old man, white hair, thin, tiny, very old. Definitely seen a lot of football in his life. He said, Keith, you made me $10,000. I said, how did I do that? He said, Coach Parcells said that if any undrafted free agent makes the team, the scout that brought him in gets a $10,000 bonus. It's like, wow, well, how did you find me? How did you find me at Northern Arizona University? We don't really put out a lot of NFL product there. He's like, well, you remember your junior year when you were playing against Sam Houston State in the playoffs and you chased that receiver down from about 20 yards behind and you never gave up on the play? I'm like, yeah, I remember that play. He's like, it was that play. He's like, that's why you're a Dallas Cowboy. And then he said, but the thing is, I wasn't there scouting you. I was scouting a player on the other team, and I saw you. I was like, wow. And then he took a step back, and in his old man voice, he said, you never know who's watching. And he's so right, not only in football, but in life. You never know who's watching. I learned a very valuable lesson that day. So my first year in the league, I played very well. I ended up second on the team in special teams tackles. But then in the offseason, we were going through practices, and I was going through a manic episode. I didn't know what was going on, but I wasn't sleeping again. I walked right into Coach Parcells' office, handed him my book, and told him that I quit. Because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to go see a doctor. I didn't talk about mental illness growing up. We didn't have Mental Health Awareness Month, and we didn't have mental health awareness in school. We didn't talk about it. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew how to do was quit. And he looked at me, he sat me down, and he goes, Keith, all of us have a demon in our head. All of us. Every one of us humans has a demon that lives in our head. This is Bill Parcells. And he's like, our job as humans is to beat that demon. He's to beat your demon. Then he looks at me and he goes, get out of my office, you're not quitting. I said, okay, coach. So I got up and I walked out with my playbook. The next year I got cut. We switched our defense. I got picked up by the Indianapolis Colts. I went to go play for one of the best coaches of all time, Tony Dungy. And it was amazing. I thought things would be different, going to play for a different organization where it was a lot more laid back. but I realized you can't really run from who you are. And I was going through the same things, sleepless nights, anxiety. So I pulled my wife aside the day we're going, not aside, we sat down and talked for a long time. And I said, I'm going to quit or get help. And it was the day we were leaving to play the Baltimore Ravens. And she said, I think, it's time to get help. So I walk into Coach Dungy's office. I said, Coach, I need help. I haven't slept in a very long time. I'm dealing with all this anxiety. I can't get on the plane today to go play the Baltimore Ravens. And he brought in the general manager, who's a Hall of Famer, Bill Polian. He was there, who's a Hall of Famer. He brought in the medical staff. He brought in my position coach. He brought my wife Jill in, who's sitting in the car in her pajamas, and we're sitting around the conference room. And here I am, 25 years old, thinking, what am I doing? Like, I can't believe I'm telling these football guys that I can't play in a game because of my mental health. I was very embarrassed, I guess, and I didn't feel like a man. And they prescribed me medication for the first time in my life, and they went off and they played the Ravens without me. When they came back, I started playing in the best football of my life. I was named team captain. What an honor to be a team captain with guys like Peyton Manning and David Thornton and Gary Brackett. One of the highest honors of my life was being named that. I'm very honored. At the end of that season, I played well enough that they extended my contract for 2 more years. They gave me a 2-year extension. They cared about my mental health, but they didn't care about my mental health, if that makes sense. They wanted me, they knew what type of player I was. They knew how hard I tried and how much I cared. So they extended my contract for 2 more years. It just goes to show you what type of organization the Colts were. But more importantly, it goes to show you that you can go to anybody and ask for help. Whether it's in elementary school or middle school or high school or college or corporate America or organizations like Fresh Hope or even the NFL. There's people out there that are willing to help if you just ask. That's what I did. And luckily I did, because the next year we played in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 41. It was amazing. I can't get up here and really tell you how cool it was, because it was really cool. And I played in that game with a high ankle sprain, a sprained MCL, 2 broken ribs in my back, an undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and we won. 29-17. As I'm up here today, I look back at those 2 weeks that you get to prepare for the Super Bowl, and they give you 2 weeks instead of 1. I slept every night like a baby. Every night. I had 0 anxiety. I was able to enjoy all the time with my wife and my teammates and my friends and my family. And now I know why. It's because it was God looking down on me. All those years of going through what I went through, He gave me 1 game. And that's why I'm here tonight, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for that game, I wouldn't be here. But things get thicker and heavier, trust me. The next year I got cut, and I broke my sternum, got cut, got picked up by the Giants, decided to retire going into my 6th year. And then my wife and I moved back to Buffalo, New York, where I'm from. She got a job in nursing, and I got a job selling medical devices. I was assisting orthopedic surgeons in surgery. I was not qualified for that at all, but it was a great job. And we wanted to start a family. The stressors of the NFL were behind us. We wanted to start a family, and my wife got pregnant, and she miscarried early in a pregnancy, and that was my trigger. That's when my bipolar came out, and I went into a severe manic episode. And I'll tell you what it was like for me. Everybody's different, but for me, everything was great at first. While my wife was grieving, I was on cloud 9. I couldn't stop talking. I was coming up with great ideas for work. I was goal-oriented, very motivated. I started spending tons and tons of money. I spent $35,000 in a week on stuff I never would buy, like snowboards and hot tubs and clothes, and you name it, I was buying it. I felt invincible, to be honest. And then I walked into a jewelry store, and I never used to wear a watch. I bought a Rolex. I bought a tag in the same day. And then I saw my wife, and she was looking at diamond earrings. And she's like, I'm like, why don't you get them both pairs? And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know, this all could be for our anniversary. She looks at me and she said, last year you took me to Olive Garden. She's right. She's right, I did. But these feelings and these symptoms, they switched dramatically. I started becoming very paranoid, very delusional. I started thinking that my phones and my computers were bugged. I started thinking the airwaves in the air were seeping into my brain. I started thinking that I was being called on by God to be a prophet. As I was laying, I can remember it vividly. I was laying in my bed, sweating profusely, scared to death. These things happen. It's not even because I got hit in the head. People are like, oh, you've been hit in the head too many times. No, it's because I have bipolar disorder. These things happen to people. These things happen. And then I began to hallucinate. And this is when my wife took me, she didn't know what to do. She took me to the psychiatrist. And I was diagnosed on the spot with bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features and said I was in a mixed state. And this is when I got my label. I am bipolar. Listen to me. I am bipolar. A lot of people don't like to hear that in the mental health community. I might step on some toes. A lot of people would rather you say, I have bipolar. I feel like if you had cancer, you wouldn't say, I am cancer. You'd say, I have cancer. But I am bipolar, and I'll tell you why. I am bipolar because it's the way I think. It's how I react. It's my moods. It's who I am. It's my heart. It's me. It's why I made the Dallas Cowboys as an undrafted free agent out of a small school when I wasn't supposed to. It's why I was a team captain. It's why I won a Super Bowl. But most importantly, it's why, or because, my wife loves me, and I have 2 beautiful boys who adore me. So for me, I'm bipolar. I don't have it. I am it. I fell into a depression after that for 18 months after I was diagnosed. 18 long months. I'm trying to make this fast. It was hell. If there's hell on earth, I lived it. And a lot of you, maybe in this room, have gone through a true depression. I didn't bathe. All I did was sleep. I didn't brush my teeth. I wouldn't eat. I lay in bed thinking of death, thinking of dying. I had to go on disability at work. Here I was, an ex-NFL superstar back in my hometown, having to go on disability because I couldn't work because of a mental health issue. I didn't tell anybody, nobody, about what was going on. I wouldn't let my wife tell anybody. I was scared to death. I was ashamed. I felt stigmatized. It was awful. 18 months of this. I could tell you so many stories about it, but I can't. I don't know if I have the time. 18 months went by, and then July 6th came around. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is I wanted the pain to end. My son, Connor, was 10 weeks old. He was sleeping. I went into the bathroom, and then I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for a week. It was awful. But when I got out, when I was in the psychiatric hospital, I remember praying, and I prayed to God for purpose. I mean, I had no purpose anymore. Who was I? I felt. I didn't know who I was. I prayed for purpose. Now, standing here today, I know my purpose. It's this. He answered all those questions that I've had since it wasn't winning the Super Bowl. That was just my platform. This is my purpose. But I got out of the psychiatric hospital and I met up with one of the top doctors in the country for bipolar disorder. Put me on the right medication. It's changed since. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've been very proactive in finding my own wellness. It starts with me, I've learned. I have a great support system who've helped me along the way, but I realize it starts with me. I get up, I exercise. I kick the booze. I don't drink anymore. One of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I don't do drugs, quit tobacco, all of it, because I want to be healthy. I started a foundation called Fourth and Forever which raises awareness for mental health. We're small. It's just really me. We're me and my 2 high school buddies. And we give back to, research when we can. And I wrote a book, which was a journey in itself. Under My Helmet, a football player's lifelong battle with bipolar disorder. That was definitely a challenge, but very therapeutic. And then now I go around the country and I speak at organizations like Fresh Hope. What an amazing, amazing organization this is. That's why when you open your pocketbooks and your purses, be generous, because it goes to a great, great cause. An amazing cause. It's underfunded and we need it in this country and worldwide. I go to therapy. I'm not afraid to say it. I raised 2 beautiful little boys, have a beautiful, caring wife, and an amazing family. And I thank God every day that I'm still here to be able to do this. And I'd like to end with a quote. It's, mental illness is not contagious. You can't catch it from being kind. So let's be kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. That was wonderful. And when we give these awards, I always worry about how heavy they are, because this is very heavy glass. I'm not worried about giving it to him. He'll handle it just fine, I'm sure. But anyway, listen, I know that the book just came out not long ago, and I think we have books here available, and I think he's willing to sign it or meet anybody that wants to talk to him out in the foyer afterwards. So, but I really appreciate the fact that you are, a pastor talking about mental health, that's one thing. But a jock talking about mental health, that's something. And I belong to a health club. I love the sauna or the steam room. I'll meet you there, but not in the exercise room. Yeah, exactly. So on behalf of Fresh Hope, thank you for inspiring hope. And I believe that your purpose is only unfolding in our country.
Thank you.
You bet. God bless you.